In the dense forests of northern Minnesota, temperatures plummeted to negative 20 degrees. A 7-year-old wandered away from a winter camping site. Search teams scoured the wilderness for 18 hours, fearing the worst, but they weren't prepared for what they found. A massive gray wolf, known to be one of the most fearsome predators in North America, had found the child first. This story challenges everything we thought we knew about these mysterious creatures. The events that unfolded in those frozen woods would change our understanding of wild animals forever. Chapter 1. The Child's Story. Emily Matthews loved the outdoors. Even at 7, she showed a natural curiosity for wildlife that made her parents both proud and nervous. The winter camping trip to Superior National Forest was supposed to be a special Christmas gift, her first real adventure in the wilderness. The Matthews family had carefully planned every detail. Tom, Emily's father, was an experienced camper who had visited these grounds dozens of times over the past 20 years. Sarah, her mother, had packed extra supplies, emergency gear, and enough food to last them a week, despite their planned 3-day stay. December 15th started like any other winter morning in the forest. The family enjoyed breakfast around a carefully maintained campfire, discussing their plans to explore some nearby trails. Emily wore her new bright red winter coat, thick snow pants, and the hiking boots she'd been breaking in for weeks. Nobody could have predicted how crucial this warm clothing would become. The incident occurred during what should have been a routine bathroom break. The family's campsite was well organized, with designated paths to specific areas. Emily had followed these paths several times already during their stay. But this time, something caught her attention, tracks in the snow she hadn't noticed before. Being the curious child she was, Emily followed the tracks, convinced they belonged to a rabbit she'd spotted earlier that morning. She kept the campsite smoke in view, just as her father had taught her, but the winter wind picked up and snow began to fall. Within minutes, the smoke signal disappeared behind the thickening curtain of white. Emily tried to retrace her steps, but the fresh snow had already begun covering her tracks. The forest, once familiar and exciting, transformed into an endless maze of white-covered trees. Every direction looked the same. The howling wind drowned out her parents' distant calls. Panic set in as the reality of her situation became clear. Emily remembered her father's teachings. Stay put if you get lost. But the dropping temperature and increasing snowfall forced her to seek shelter. She found a hollow beneath a large pine tree, its branches heavy with snow providing some protection from the wind. Hours passed. The brief winter daylight began to fade, taking with it what little warmth the sun had provided. Emily huddled in her coat, trying to make herself as small as possible to preserve body heat. She could hear distant sounds, branches creaking under the weight of snow, the wind whistling through the trees, and occasionally something else, something moving. The forest had grown darker, and the temperature continued to drop. Emily's emergency whistle, still hanging around her neck, felt frozen against her chest. She'd been blowing it periodically, but the wind seemed to steal the sound away before it could travel far. Her water bottle had frozen solid, and the granola bar in her pocket had become too hard to eat. As night fully descended, Emily faced her greatest challenge yet. The darkness brought new sounds, new fears, and an overwhelming sense of isolation. She thought about her parents, imagining their frantic searches, the fear in their voices as they called her name. She thought about her warm sleeping bag back at the campsite, just a few hours ago within reach, now seemingly a world away. The search had begun immediately after her disappearance. Tom and Sarah's initial calls turned into desperate shouts. They contacted the forest rangers within an hour of realizing Emily was truly lost. By nightfall, more than 50 people were combing the forest, including local law enforcement, Forest Service personnel, and volunteers from nearby communities. But the weather worked against them. The snowfall masked any tracks Emily might have left, and the wind chill made it dangerous for searchers to stay out too long. The rescue teams used thermal imaging equipment, but the dense forest canopy complicated their efforts. As the first night approached, hope began to fade. Statistics showed that survival rates for children lost in such conditions dropped dramatically after the first 12 hours. What no one knew was that Emily wasn't alone in the forest. Something had been watching her, tracking her movements since she first strayed from the path. Something that would challenge everything we think we know about wild animals and human interaction. Chapter 2. The Wolf's Appearance. The first sign wasn't visual. It was the sound of heavy paws crushing frozen snow. Emily's heart raced as she pressed herself deeper into the hollow of the pine tree. Through the darkness, two green-gold eyes reflected what little moonlight filtered through the branches. A massive gray wolf emerged from the shadows. Its fur, thick and mottled with winter colors, blended perfectly with the snowy landscape. Standing nearly 3 feet tall at the shoulder, the wolf was larger than any canine Emily had ever seen. Wildlife experts would later identify it as a northwestern wolf, one of the largest subspecies in North America. The wolf approached slowly, deliberate in each step. Its head was lowered, but its eyes remained fixed on Emily. Contrary to typical wolf behavior, there was no sign of aggression, no raised hackles, no bared teeth. Instead, the wolf exhibited what biologists would later describe as extraordinary investigative behavior. 20 feet became 15, then 10. Emily remained frozen, her survival instinct screaming at her to run, but her body unable to move. The wolf circled the hollow, its nose working overtime, taking in Emily's scent. Each circle brought it closer until it stood just feet away from her shelter. Then something remarkable happened. The wolf lay down in the snow, positioning itself at the entrance of Emily's hollow. Its massive body blocked much of the wind that had been cutting through her shelter. The effect was immediate. The small space began to retain more heat. As hours passed, the wolf's presence proved to be more than just protective. It became clear that the animal was actively working to ensure Emily's survival. When she shivered violently, the wolf inched closer, its body radiating warmth. When distant coyotes howled, the wolf responded with deep, resonant howls that echoed through the forest, sounds that would later help the rescue teams locate their position. The wolf's behavior defied everything known about these typically shy, human-averse creatures. Experts would later theorize that this particular wolf might have had previous positive interactions with humans, or possibly retained some ancient genetic memory of human-wolf cooperation from the early days of domestication. Throughout the night, the wolf maintained its vigil. It left only twice, each time returning within minutes. On its second return, it carried something in its mouth, a frozen but still intact rabbit. Though Emily couldn't eat the rabbit, the wolf's hunting instinct and attempt to provide food demonstrated an unexpected level of care. The most fascinating aspect of this encounter was the wolf's apparent understanding of Emily's distress. Each time she cried, the wolf would lift its head and make soft whining sounds, behavior typically reserved for communicating with wolf pups. It was as if this wild predator had somehow tapped into an ancient connection between species, becoming a guardian rather than a threat. Chapter 3. The Unexpected Bond. The pre-dawn hours brought new challenges. Emily's body temperature had dropped dangerously low despite the wolf's protection. The animal seemed to sense this, pressing closer to her hollow. Its thick fur, evolved to withstand Arctic temperatures, became a crucial barrier between Emily and the lethal cold. What happened next would baffle wildlife behavioral experts for years to come. The wolf began a series of distinct vocalizations, not the typical howls used for communication with its pack, but softer, almost song-like sounds. These sounds, recorded later by researchers studying wolf-human interactions, matched frequencies known to have calming effects on both humans and animals. Emily, despite her fear and exhaustion, found herself responding to these sounds. She began humming back, a simple lullaby her mother often sang. The wolf's ears perked up and its tail, previously still, began a slow, gentle wag. This exchange created what wildlife behaviorists would later term a cross-species communication bridge. The wolf's protective behavior intensified as morning approached. It began clearing snow around the hollow, creating a wider barrier against the wind. When other animals approached, drawn perhaps by Emily's scent, the wolf would rise, its massive frame becoming an intimidating deterrent. Not once did it need to show aggression. Its mere presence was enough to keep other wildlife at bay. Survival experts would later analyze every detail of this extraordinary encounter. The wolf displayed behaviors typically reserved for protecting vulnerable pack members. It positioned itself between Emily and potential threats, maintained constant vigilance, and demonstrated remarkable patience with her human limitations. The wolf's intelligence became increasingly apparent through its problem-solving abilities. When Emily tried to eat snow for hydration, the wolf used its paw to scrape away the top layer, exposing cleaner snow beneath. When she struggled to stay awake, a dangerous situation in hypothermia conditions, the wolf would gently nudge her, keeping her conscious. These actions showed an understanding of human needs that transcended basic instinct. As dawn broke, Emily noticed something extraordinary about her guardian. The wolf had an old scar running down its left foreleg, evidence of a previous injury that had healed. This detail would later help researchers identify it as a wolf that had been briefly captured and tagged 5 years earlier during a wildlife study. The tags were gone, but the documentation of its unusually calm demeanor during capture matched its current behavior. The bond deepened through shared experiences. When distant sounds spooked Emily, the wolf would press closer, its steady presence calming her fears. When she shivered violently, it would adjust its position to better block the wind. These weren't just random acts. They demonstrated a level of emotional intelligence previously undocumented in wild wolves. The most remarkable aspects of this encounter emerged in the quiet moments. The wolf showed an uncanny ability to read Emily's emotional state. When tears froze on her cheeks, it would make soft, whimpering sounds, almost as if trying to comfort her. When she spoke to it, telling stories to keep herself awake, it maintained eye contact, a behavior rarely seen in wild animals. Throughout the night, the wolf demonstrated what researchers would later call adaptive caregiving. It modified its natural behaviors to meet Emily's needs. When hunting instincts urged it to pursue distant prey, it remained. When pack calls echoed through the forest, it responded but didn't leave. Every decision seemed calculated to ensure Emily's survival. Perhaps most remarkably, the wolf seemed to understand the concept of hope. Each time Emily's spirits flagged, it would position itself so she could lean against its warm bulk. The simple act of physical contact provided not just warmth, but a profound sense of connection that helped her maintain her will to survive. Scientists studying this case would later point to the concept of evolutionary memory, the idea that deep in both human and wolf DNA lies the remembrance of ancient cooperation between our species. This genetic memory, they theorized, could explain the wolf's extraordinary protective instincts toward a human child. As the morning light strengthened, the wolf's behavior began to change. It became more alert, its ears constantly moving, catching sounds too faint for human ears. Something was approaching, something that would test this unexpected bond between child and predator. Chapter 4. The Search Party. At first light, the search operation transformed. 3 helicopters equipped with thermal imaging technology joined the ground teams. The overnight snowfall had finally stopped, but the bitter cold remained. Search and rescue teams, now numbering over 100, spread out in a strategic grid pattern across the vast Minnesota wilderness. Tom Matthews hadn't slept. His voice, hoarse from calling Emily's name, barely carried above the wind. Dark circles shadowed his eyes as he trudged through knee-deep snow, refusing to take breaks despite the medical team's warnings about exhaustion. Sarah Matthews worked with the command center, providing every detail that might help. The exact color of Emily's coat, her boot size, her likely behavior under stress. The local community rallied around them, providing hot coffee, extra equipment, and unwavering support. Radio chatter crackled through the morning air. Grid section Charlie 7 clear. Nothing in Delta 3. Possible tracks in Echo 2. Negative confirmation. Each negative report sent a fresh wave of despair through the search teams. But they pressed on, driven by the knowledge that children had survived worse conditions. The key factor was Emily's winter gear, properly rated for sub-zero temperatures. Local tracker James Running Bear noticed something the others had missed. Wolf tracks, unusually large ones, intersecting with small boot prints before the snowfall covered them. Most searchers dismissed this as a coincidence, but Running Bear's expression remained thoughtful. In 40 years of tracking, he'd never seen wolf tracks quite like these. "These prints tell a story," Running Bear explained to the search coordinator, kneeling in the snow. "The wolf wasn't hunting. See how it parallels the child's path? No attack pattern, no chase sequence. It was following, yes, but something else was happening here." His words carried weight. He'd tracked predators in these woods for decades. His finger traced the unusual pattern in the snow, showing how the wolf's tracks deliberately overlapped with Emily's last known path. The helicopter teams reported a thermal signature in Sector Echo 5, but it turned out to be a moose bedded down in the snow. Another promising lead in Fox 3 revealed only a fallen tree trunk radiating residual heat. Time was running out. Medical experts at the command center warned that even with proper winter gear, Emily's chances diminished with each passing hour. The search team split into smaller units, each equipped with thermal imaging devices and emergency medical supplies. State police joined the effort, bringing additional resources and search dogs. But the K-9 unit struggled in the extreme cold, their sensitive noses compromised by the freezing temperatures. Senior Ranger Mike Peterson coordinated from the mobile command center, updating search patterns based on wind direction and terrain analysis. "We're dealing with a smart kid," he briefed the teams. "Emily's been taught basic survival skills. Focus on natural shelters, rock formations, dense tree coverage, anything that could provide protection from the wind." Then came the sound that changed everything. A wolf's howl, but not the typical hunting cry or pack call. This howl had a different quality, almost like it was meant to be heard by human ears. Running Bear's head snapped up. "That's our signal!" he said firmly. "That wolf wants to be found!" The search teams redirected, following the howls. As they drew closer, something extraordinary happened. The wolf's calls became more frequent, more insistent. It was doing something unprecedented, actively trying to draw human attention. The behavior contradicted everything known about wolf psychology. Radio communications intensified. Movement spotted in Sector Fox 2. Confirmed large canine signature. Approach with extreme caution. All units converge on these coordinates. Medical team standing by for immediate response. The search teams moved carefully through the dense forest, aware that they might be approaching a dangerous predator. But Running Bear's voice cut through the tension. Hold your weapons. This isn't what we think it is. Something remarkable is happening here. Expert trackers positioned themselves strategically, ready to respond if the wolf showed aggression. The medical team prepared for immediate intervention, knowing that Emily's condition would be critical after so many hours in the cold. Search dogs, previously agitated by the wolf's scent, now showed unusual calm, almost as if they sensed something the humans couldn't quite understand. The wolf's behavior defied everything the rescue teams had been trained to expect. Instead of fleeing from the approaching humans or showing aggression, it stood its ground while maintaining a protective stance near Emily's location. Its body language conveyed neither threat nor fear, but rather an almost diplomatic presence. Chapter 5. The Discovery. The moment of discovery would later be documented in over 50 witness statements. The search teams emerged into a small clearing led by Running Bear. The wolf stood at attention, its posture alert but non-threatening. Behind it, partially visible in the hollow of an ancient pine, was a flash of red, Emily's winter coat. Tom Matthews surged forward, but Running Bear's arm blocked his path. "Wait," the tracker commanded. "Let's not disturb what's working." The wolf's ears twitched at their voices, but it held its position. Its eyes, intelligent and calm, moved from one person to another, assessing without aggression. The medical team readied their equipment while maintaining a safe distance. Dr. Sarah Chen, the lead emergency physician, observed Emily's position through binoculars. "She's moving," she reported, her professional tone barely containing her excitement. "She's conscious and appears to be responding to our presence." The wolf turned its head toward Emily, then back to the search party. It took 2 steps to the side, creating a clear line of sight while maintaining its protective stance. This deliberate movement stunned even the most experienced wildlife experts present. The wolf was actively facilitating the rescue while ensuring Emily's safety. Emily's voice, weak but clear, carried across the clearing. "He kept me warm," she called out. "He's my friend." The simplicity of her words belied the extraordinary nature of what had transpired. The wolf's ears perked up at her voice, and its tail moved in a gentle wag, a gesture more reminiscent of a domestic dog than a wild predator. The scene captivated everyone present. Search team members, hardened by years of rescue operations, stood in awe of the unprecedented situation unfolding before them. The wolf's behavior defied every protocol, every training scenario they'd ever encountered. Dr. Chen took the lead, approaching slowly with Running Bear at her side. The wolf watched their advance, its body language remaining calm. When they were within 10 feet, it slowly sat down, maintaining its position between them and Emily, but clearly indicating its peaceful intentions. The medical examination revealed the miraculous nature of Emily's survival. Despite spending nearly 18 hours in sub-zero temperatures, her core body temperature had not dropped to dangerous levels. The wolf's body heat and the shelter of the hollow had created a microclimate just warm enough to prevent severe hypothermia. "This shouldn't be possible," Dr. Chen muttered as she checked Emily's vitals. "She should be in critical condition, but her readings are those of someone who spent the night in an unheated cabin, not in the open wilderness." The wolf's protection had made the difference between life and death. The medical team documented every detail of Emily's condition. Her extremities showed no signs of frostbite, protected by both her winter gear and the wolf's strategic positioning throughout the night. The snow around the hollow had been packed down in a way that created an insulating barrier, a behavior more commonly associated with Arctic foxes than wolves. Emily's father approached next, tears freezing on his cheeks. The wolf studied him intently, noting his resemblance to Emily, then did something unprecedented. It stood, walked a few paces away, and lay down, effectively handing over its guardianship role. Wildlife biologists would later describe this as one of the most sophisticated displays of interspecies cooperation ever documented. Sarah Matthews joined her husband, moving slowly under Running Bear's guidance. The wolf's eyes tracked her movement, but its relaxed posture never changed. The family reunion brought tears to even the most stoic rescue team members. The wolf's behavior throughout demonstrated an almost human understanding of the emotional significance of the moment. As the medical team prepared Emily for transport, she insisted on saying goodbye to her protector. The wolf remained in its resting position, but lifted its head attentively as she approached with her father. "Thank you," she said, simply, and the wolf's tail swept once across the snow in response. The gesture, caught on multiple cameras, would become one of the most studied moments of the entire incident. The rescue teams maintained a protective circle as Emily was helped onto a stretcher. Her vital signs remained stable, a testament to the wolf's extraordinary care throughout the night. The medical helicopter landed in a nearby clearing, its rotors stirring up clouds of fresh snow. Throughout the evacuation process, the wolf remained visible at the edge of the clearing, watching. Perhaps most remarkably, the wolf didn't immediately disappear into the forest when the humans began their departure. It maintained its vigil, tracking the movement of the medical team as they carried Emily to the helicopter. Only after the aircraft had lifted off, carrying Emily to safety, did the wolf finally turn and melt away into the forest depths. The aftermath. The events in Superior National Forest sparked worldwide scientific interest. Research teams from major universities descended on the area, studying everything from wolf tracks to DNA samples found in the snow. The wolf, easily identifiable by its distinctive scar, was spotted several times in the following months, but never approached humans again. Emily's story challenged fundamental assumptions about wolf behavior. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, a leading expert in canine cognition, conducted a 6-month study of the incident. What we witnessed wasn't just unusual. It completely rewrites our understanding of wolf intelligence and their capacity for empathy across species boundaries. The Minnesota Wildlife Department established new protocols for wolf encounters based on this incident. Instead of treating all wolf encounters as potential threats, they developed nuanced guidelines that accounted for the possibility of non-aggressive interactions. The policy shift influenced wildlife management practices across North America. Emily herself recovered fully, showing no lasting physical effects from her ordeal. Her experience transformed her into an unexpected advocate for wolf conservation. Through her family's foundation, she now helps fund research into wolf behavior and supports wilderness protection initiatives. The most profound impact, however, wasn't scientific. It was personal. Emily's story resonated with people worldwide, challenging preconceptions about wild animals and human-wildlife relationships. As Emily would later say in a children's book about her experience, "Sometimes the wild isn't what we think it is. Sometimes it's where we find our most unexpected friends." Local tribes, particularly those with wolf clan histories, saw the incident as confirmation of ancient teachings about the connection between humans and wolves. Running Bear's detailed analysis of the wolf's behavior became required reading in wildlife management courses. Today, a small plaque marks the location where Emily was found. It bears a simple inscription that captures the extraordinary events of that winter night. Here, In the depths of winter, a wolf chose to guard rather than hunt, to protect rather than harm, reminding us that compassion knows no species barrier.